Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another recording of Pinball Arcade. So last time we did Medieval Madness. Now we're doing No Good Gophers. No Good Gophers from 1997, a Williams
You're on
table.
our turf now.
I kind of feel like Medieval Madness is a little bit overhyped. Now remember we had played a previous golf game that also didn't really catch my boat, and I had shown off No Good Gophers as being more directly related to a Caddyshack themed table. I don't see any way you don't immediately just assume that both of those tables stole a lot um, from the movie Caddyshack, but there is definitely some weirdness in 1997 stealing from the theme of Caddyshack because yeah, that movie came out in the 80s and it wasn't that popular. Um, it's hardly one of the movies that gets aired um, constantly on cable channels or anything that people would buy DVDs for, really. Uh, so yeah, unfortunately we can't look at the table, so we'll just have to, as it pans, look over there on the left. I see three uh, oddly aligned bumpers. To the right of that, I see a loop shot. To the right of that, we have a captive ball, a couple of captive balls. And then in the center, we have a ramp that pops down to jump. Otherwise, it is then three shots. There's a sinkhole to the right of the two captive balls, and then there is a ramp jump in the center lane, or almost center lane, and then to the right of that is another ramp jump, and both of those ramps pop up and have gophers under them. um, there is a To the right of the rightmost ramp jump is the outlet for the loop, which you can go either way, and then there is a upper field right flipper to shoot the ball up to another ramp, which oddly makes it a table that has like three or four ramps, which seems like a lot. And then you look at the lower playfield, and there's almost nothing, maybe some standing targets, and that's it. Um, Arguably, just visually looking at this with the blue transparent plastic and then some clear plastic, also, there's just a lot of transparent plastic, and I don't see a point for that, really. I think with the introduction of transparent plastic, you open up yourself to having two options between the metal wire frame and the plastic. So you should probably, in every table, spice it up and do that. There is a red, white, and blue theme, but the blue seems to be so overwhelming because of the ramps that it's mostly a water feel. Um, which this is a golf game, so unless the idea is that you're shooting the balls into water, it doesn't really make sense. Um, there probably is a shot on here called a sand trap. There's probably a shot on here that's the green where you would. There's probably a shot on here that's the equivalent of a hole in one. Um, Birdies, things like that. There is a focus on hitting one of the ramps so you can jump a uh, golf cart. Unlike the previous pinball game, there's no art here with just objectified females, which is kind of nice because there was in the previous table, literally, I think you were groping there was a picture of a male character groping the butt of a female character. Instead, this is much more focused around the gophers, more than even the golfer, um, which I think from a kid's perspective, that is where Kenny Shack's most memorable is that the gopher is being silly and stealing the golf balls. You kind of forget all the Rodney Dangerfield jokes and all the old man comedian jokes and all the teenage uh, sex comedy that is in Caddyshack, and I haven't watched Caddyshack in a while. There's a spinner, but I'm not sure the spinner actually affects the play field very often because I don't think the ball's likely to be on top of it. Which arguably a lot of tables could have a reward wheel that spins directly on the play field, and then only in a rare multi-ball situation would that actually affect anything, and then you can have a tighter game that way and better shots that way. Did not mean to exit, but since we did exit, teed off is the other table. So one thing I will say about teed off is that, see, here you are. Here you have an objectified female character just with her butt being groped. This roulette table is a gimmick that doesn't get used enough, and then you have very few shots, a straight up the center shot, and just a couple shots this way, a ramp, a captive ball with bumpers under the red plastic. It's almost like they took the same concept that was terrible here about hiding parts of the play field with colored plastic and expanded that to the blue stuff, to the blue plastic. This is a Gottlieb table, so Williams, I suppose at that point, is stealing the idea, and I imagine by 1997 Gottlieb was either close to being out of business or completely out of business. I imagine completely out of business because we haven't seen a Gottlieb table in quite a while. Alright. Getting around on this menu is still a bit of a hassle with the controller. Let's check the flyer. So you have two Gophers. This is probably a table because it is just themed around golfing, and golfing in itself is not going to make the most interesting pinball table. This would be a table that would work well to have references to previous Williams tables, whereas a lot of other Williams tables make references a little too often. So we'll listen for call-outs and any kind of Easter egg type references. I kind of feel like you should have 3 Gophers for like a 3-ball multi-ball, but instead you just have 2, which is basically means there's going to be two voice actors talking. The way this flyer highlights the elements is pretty awful. There's big chunks of green on green text that I can't read at all. Like in the lower right hand corner, you can barely even make out that there is text there. And I assume that is text and that is not just somebody drawing blades of grass. But yeah, not a good visual design. And it certainly does say something that that you have pinball tables that really need good visual design for the back glass and for the tabletop and just in general for the dot matrix display too, and yet they seem to not have enough energy or budget to even have a decent color palette on their flyer. That seems lazy. For the standard goals, we're supposed to complete the kick targets, score the sand trap bonus, which we've already done when I was showing off the game, complete a skill shot, score a hole-in-one, and earn an extra ball. So let's see. With good timing, the sand trap is a great way to score points. Sand trap is lit at the start of each new game and can be relit by shooting the advanced trap targets here or here. There's several stand-up targets on this table that are kind of hard to see. Shoot the ball into the saucer to activate it. Once it's activated, point value begins to display on the screen, and the kick spots begin lighting one at a time. Engaging the left flipper launches the ball out of the sand trap into the kick spot. Why it's spelling kick doesn't really make a lot of sense. They are kick flippers, which are kick targets, which are slightly different than standing targets in that they actually kick the ball backward, and we haven't really covered that as that being a big difference. Let's jump into the game.
The only good golfer is a dead golfer.
Now, there was one thing that occurred to me as I was watching the unboxing of a 1988 Cyclone pinball table on YouTube, is even in this wow, multiball, this table I think probably damages itself a little bit by moving the jump up and down quite a lot. There probably needs to be some durability considerations on whether or not you're going to have a movable component on your table. See, the kick back there just shot the ball up, but it missed the angle to where the upper right flipper would be, which is exactly where I would expect it to shoot the ball.
Blast that card.
This is a table that really wants some hole in some center lane shots. Anyways, what I was saying is, what occurred to me is, in the emulation of this table, and we know that the DirectX 11 version of this table does some wonkiness with its lighting engine, but more to the point, there's a real question as to, are the collective memories of pinball fans accurate, or have we made the colors brighter in an emulation like this than they actually ever were? Because the truth is, most tables, even if they are brand new out of the box but 30 years old, probably have significant amounts of fading on the colors. And that is also true for like old comic books too, and old books and old paintings. Like all of the marble statues, we think, actually had bright colorful paints all over them, and the paint just faded off to leave the white monochromatic marble statue behind. The Mona Lisa is a great example of that. We have no idea what the Mona Lisa originally looked like to some extent, because people have been repairing and touching up the Mona Lisa over and over again. And at a certain point, a piece of art like the Mona Lisa, this is glitched. Yeah, this sucks that this kind of stuff happens.
If balls were meant to fly, they'd have wings.
So the one of the two in-lane ramps lowers the jump for a while, and then it pops up. So it's one of these in-lane switches. But making that jump doesn't seem to do exactly what you would expect it to do.
Go pound some sand, hacker.
You see, he calls him a hacker, not like a computer hacker, but as an old term of someone that's just a hack. terrible at golfing. Which, if you were going to modernize this table, you would definitely get rid of that phrase because it just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, we don't know. We don't know if the color and the simulation here and the emulation is actually being particularly accurate. At a certain point, then it also makes an argument that if Pinball Arcade was really ambitious, they might make their own versions of the table like Pinball FX did, instead of trying to be absolutely true to reality emulation. And arguably they're not even that good. Feels like to get a hole in one, you have to shoot the ball in that hole before you shoot up the ramp at all. Or you have to score a lot of ways to reduce the number of strokes, which that might be the case too, because we just did see it say score minus stroke -1. Yeah, straight down the middle drains. Although, in all fairness, this table has a fairly small hole there, and while we can say it would be nice if there's a center peg, in this case a center peg probably wouldn't even help that much because these Williams flippers are closer together than normal. You can tell that because of the fact that there's two left in lanes where they would have had to have gotten that room somewhere, or this would have had to be a wide body table. And yeah, let me just make sure we're not in, nope, there's no pro mode at all anyways here, so it is just straight up glitching because I think I'm hitting the buttons too fast. No auto launcher. In a lot of ways, this table, I think, would just need a full reset, rebuild, because I kind of don't like as a hole-in-one. See, I don't know how I just got a hole-in-one when that totally didn't feel like I got a hole-in-one. And see, we just landed in the water hazard, and normally that would be a bad thing, but I think in pinball, that's actually a good thing. And so you kind of have that as a problem in general. There was a hole-in-one. Because golf is like the exact opposite of pinball. Pinball, you want it to just keep going and going and going forever and ever, which means you would want as many strokes, which would be the equivalent of hitting a pinball with a flipper. And yet the golf is the exact opposite. I think I would like a sinkhole in the center, because we've seen that only in like one table, maybe two tables, where there's a sinkhole right in the center to stop, or at least severely reduce the odds of you draining out down the center. And in this case, you could have a robotic guy with a golf club actually hit the ball out of the sinkhole and upward and up towards a ramp, and that would allow you to severely control the amount of force and the direction of that shot. And maybe you have a digital element where you spin that guy around in circles, so he's not He's not just...
Big deal.
See, I had a multi-ball there, but I wasn't sure what the actual goal of the multi-ball was. A lot of games need to make that more clear. Yeah, but a little golfing man toy in the middle, shooting the ball up several different ramps that you could potentially sneak around. I've completed all the kick targets. It must be when the in lane is lit, it changes too. This is one of those tables where I can pretty much never use the right flipper just as an assistant because of the angle of the upper right flipper.
This is the part I like best.
Extra ball is lit. Knock it off.
I think you would want to remake this table so that the Gophers were more along the lines of like Alvin and the Chipmunks with kind of different personalities and not one just being an idiot. Like 2021 sentimentality, just having a doofus character feels like you're potentially making fun of mentally disabled people. Ball just flew off the edge of the table again because of bad physics.
Not even close.
This is really a great example of that first generation Pinball Arcade programming and just how bad it can be and how that never got fixed.
You're gonna need it. Golf is a contact sport.
Golf is a contact sport. Yeah. I kind of feel like the rock and roll music doesn't make sense in this table. Like, not every single table needs to try to appeal with rock and roll, but at the very least, I guess I should be happy they got away from country. And they're not doing like a Cactus Jack polka type song. There almost certainly is going to be a Wizard goal to do a full 9 holes or 18 holes.
Ooh, improve.
First things first though, I definitely would get rid of all the clear plastic. This table is basically impossible to see. Like, at least with the DirectX 11 version of this. And it's not really transparent, it's foggy white on the plastic, where modern technology certainly would be able to get that somewhat more see-through. I would have to question if you'd want to use any like glass or anything. That is another thing about Pinball Arcade, is that the glass is effectively not there. You don't see any reflections on the pinball top glass because it's just not being visually depicted at all. Which, that's fine. I would hate for the opposite to be true, and you would be distracted by streaks on glass or things like that.
Kaboom!
End up already. Not even close.
So now we are on to the regular multi-ball. It's kind of funny going from Medieval Madness to this table, in the fact that Medieval Madness was a fairly complicated table, and this is a fairly basic table.
Oh, you've done it.
I did something to earn back a pinball, which sometimes is nice. It can potentially end up giving you like a nearly infinite multi-ball.
Ah, too many balls.
But what is the jackpot? Because I've yet to hear a call out saying you've just got a jackpot. And the spinning disc is helping me, if anything.
Don't worry, gravity is your friend.
And it seems like your bonus hold
Ooh,
holds for the
impressive.
entire game.
Hey, Hacker, I hope your wheels come off. You hit your own card. Hurry up. You know. Mine could shoot better than that.
See, I'm trying to get that right ramp shot, and it just doesn't feel like I'm accomplishing that ever. And I feel like that right ramp shot is one that you're gonna have to get really good at eventually.
On it.
Like, looking at the lights on the lower playfield, even though a lot of this is not explained particularly well, it seems like we've kind of done quite a bit of things that you can do on the table. Like, I'm not sure that there are actual missions on this table, other than just sinking holes.
My brain hurts.
In multi-ball mode, of course. I'm trying to do this as slow as possible. We just got grand champions at 20 million, so another very low scoring table, which, okay. I think maybe they all got together and decided that they realized it was ridiculous to have such high scoring tables. So where are we on standard goals? Complete a skill shot. Controlling how much power you launch the ball with? How? Aim for spot targets there. Okay. So this is one more of those scenarios where
Go pound
you
some
should just
sand, Hacker.
let the ball drain as soon as the ball saver is done, and then just do the
This
skill
one's
shot.
on us.
Really does seem like you're
Not even. Oh.
actually doesn't seem like it is the in-lane switches that activate the jump. It seems like it's doing a loop. There's the skill shot. So there's all the standard goals. So we should just let the game drain at this point and look at the wizard goals and continue playing after that. Let's see. Well, what I think I would do if I was going to have a golf themed table is I would have the 3 bumpers in a perfect triangle at the top and a center shot, and that would be the green. So 2 bumpers at top, 1 bumper's down center in a triangle. Behind that bumper in the middle is a hole for the sinking the golf hole. I would probably have top lane light ups that spell the word golf. I'd probably have a, fork and slice, sinkholes or shots or ramps on the left and right. Probably have a loop that you want to hit with half energy to get to the top lane. The idea of the center drop target in the little action figure with the golf club. Maybe you program that so he has only 4 or 5, maybe only 3 locations where he shoots the ball, and maybe he just pops up the ball towards a scoop that catches the ball and then puts it either to the far top field on the left, right, or center. Or maybe you have a scoop at the entire backboard and you just have it programmed particularly well so that it will shoot anywhere from the far left at the backboard of the table all the way to the far right. And there's several different alleyways and pegs in which the ball will drain down from that point into the field. But that kind of implies you'd be overshooting it every time, but it might be interesting nonetheless. There is a new technology in the Guns N' Roses table I heard about where they have optical infrared sensors instead of rollover switches. I think they spent a lot of effort designing that for not probably much of a good reason. Rollover switches have existed in the past and sometimes they don't work great. A lot of optical switches in pinball tables don't work the greatest, particularly if you put a pinball table next to a window, which honestly you shouldn't do anyways because that would fade the paint terribly. But switches on the rollover table, like the inlane switches, the little pieces of plastic that the ball goes down and pushes a piece of metal to make a contact to another piece of metal, is such a basic, simple technology. The idea of optical switches replacing that is kind of ridiculous because it's way more expensive and way more complicated technology. On the other hand, if you do that, then you have one less moving part, and eventually, I suppose if you could reduce the number of moving parts on a pinball table, you might add a few years of life to a table. That being said, you really can't do that because then you're not making a pinball table at that point, because the pinball itself is a moving part that's interacting with other moving parts, and that's the sells point on it. It's like making the argument that if you made a car that did not roll or ever go anywhere, it would last forever, sure, but it defeats the purpose. So yeah, and as far as technology goes in pinball, it has been fairly slow. Like, I imagine in the 80s buying a pinball table was, since you were buying this custom computer, the prices probably were in line of buying a personal computer in the 80s. But the problem with that now is it's very easy to get a very good PC for a couple $1,000s, where to get a decent pinball machine, you're talking probably $5,000 or $6,000. So the price, because of a lack of economy of scale and because of the fact that it's a custom computer that doesn't use off-the-shelf parts as much as it should, never went down. And I imagine there is some artificial market manipulation too, and just scarcity, actual true scarcity exists in pinball, whereas they could have flooded the market and made 10,000 pinball units of every pinball table that existed, and then the price would have gone down. But that would have required a lot more automation, and there basically is no automation in the building of pinball tables. Not really. You can use a CNC machine to cut the play field, but then you're going to have a row of workers screwing down every component. At least that's how they have it now. So we now need to activate Off Multiball, Cart Attack, pop a Gopher, reach a hole-in-one challenge, and score a Super Jackpot. So let's start with score Super Jackpot. Multiball is a great way to score points on this table. To activate it, first shoot the center lamp to raise Bud, then shoot Bud to lower him. This lights lock and raises the center ramp. Shoot the ball under the center ramp to lock it. Next, shoot the center ramp again to raise Buzz. Shoot Buzz within 25 seconds to lower him. If you fail to shoot within 25 seconds, you must raise him again by shooting the center ramp again. Once you shoot Buzz, lock will light, and the right ramp raises. Shoot the ball under there to lock it. Another way to lock a ball is by collecting the free lock reward from the Whirlwind. Refer to the Whirlwind chapter for more details. Once 2 balls are locked, multi-ball lights on at the putting green, which the putting green on this table is just that tiny sinkhole, which should be way more focus on that. It almost feels like the putting green should be on top of the play field where the plastic is, but that would still be blocking your view and not really make a lot of sense. During 3-ball multi-ball, the left ramp is lit for Jackpot. Okay. Complete the left in-lane rollover to lower the slam ramp. For a couple seconds, shoot the slam ramp to aim for the hole-in-the-wall. Scoring a hole-in-one scores a Super Jackpot, which is worth double the value of the collected jackpot. This will relight the jackpot on the left ramp. So do you have to get a yeah, you have to get a jackpot before you can get a Super Jackpot. That's pretty consistent. Each time the 9th and 18th holes are completed, it activates a hole-in-one challenge. Papa Gopher is a mode that can be activated as a Whirlwind reward, which is given each time a hole is completed. Papa Gopher can also be activated by shooting the golf cart 8 times from the slam ramp. And I feel like the slam ramp really is just shooting the ball on that upper plastic field, which that is weird, but it's also hard to see. Yeah, it feels like that is what that is, and that feels just like a really bad design. Pros don't like upper play fields in general because they slow down the play on the lower play field. But yeah, shooting ball and getting an air ball in general and having an upper play field that just feels completely empty is really, really, really ridiculous. And there are just 2 stand-up targets for the wheels of that cart. And I don't know how you actually get the gate to close in such a way that you could actually get into the hole-in-one. Seems like you almost have to hit that middle stand-up target and bounce the ball into the hole-in-one. Shoot the slam ramp to launch balls at the golf cart. Pop a Gopher and last for 20 seconds. During this time, Bud and Buzz will pop up on each playfield. Each shot is either scores a million. Once it ends, shooting the golf cart 15 more times will activate the mode again. Okay, I think we can do that. Feels like there should be a video mode in this game, but I'm not sure there is. Card Attack is a mode that can be activated as a reward on the Whirlwind, with each reward, which is awarded each time a hole is completed. So we need to just complete holes. It can also be activated by shooting the golf cart 3 times from the slam ramp. Shooting the left ramp feeds the ball to the left in lane, which lowers the slam ramp. So it is the left in lane that activates that. Golf cart attack lasts for 20 seconds. During this time, all drive shots are lit. Drive shots are the left cart path, left ramp, center ramp, right cart path. Blah, blah, blah. We just need to activate it. So how do we activate Off Multiball? Collecting all the captive ball rewards 2 times. We'll light captive ball for about 12 seconds. Shoot it within those 12 seconds to activate Off Multiball. It's a 2-ball multiball, which you're shooting the ramps. Which, yeah, I don't feel like they fully thought through this whole table gameplay.
Gophers.
Okay, so basically there's 2 shots we should go for. One is that
I
shot
like that.
to get awards,
3 million.
which is funny that it just gave me an award, but it wasn't even really spinning the table. The other shot is to just hit the captive balls as much as possible. There's Papa Gopher.
You can hit. Oh!
For me.
I think we still have a couple of awards we need to get.
Oh.
I don't see a real reason why you couldn't have had the green be represented by the spinning wheel also. If you're going to have a gambling spinning wheel mechanic that makes no sense anyways, it might as well just be the green. Unless that you were going to try to integrate it into like being a wind measurement,
Good
that
job, bud.
the wind goes one way or the other way and blows the ball one way or the other. I don't know if there's a way you could really
Laugh that
affect
card.
the direction of the ball actually in which it flows with like a wind mechanic. Cyclone and I doubt Twister really had any mechanic like that
You're
either.
making me dizzy.
If there were fans on the edge of a pinball table blowing, it still probably wouldn't really affect the direction of the pinball by much. It's a little too heavy of a device, of an object for that to really affect things. You could have a gate at the top of a center lane shot where if the wind is blowing to the left, the gate would go to the left, and if the wind was blowing to the right, the gate would go to the right. I don't know if you want any more variety than those 2 directions though. Well, every time you get that loop, it puts it either past the left in lane or, yeah, it must be past the left in lane switch that it puts it. This very well might be one of those tables where I could get all the wizard goals, but I'm not going to particularly enjoy the experience. And then we have once again a glitch.
If balls were meant to fly, they'd have wings.
This one's on us.
Yeah, even the fact that the flippers are closer together just kind of feels like a last second decision. This feels like this table was rushed out. And I doubt in 1997 there was a golfing movie
Hang on to that ball, bud.
that was coming out that would make sense to have tried to theme around this, unless this was supposed to be Caddyshack, Not Caddyshack, what am I want to say Little Nicky, but that's not the Adam Sandler movie I'm thinking about. Happy Gilmore. But if this was supposed to be Happy Gilmore, then there should be a retirement home and the grandma, the jerk bad guy. There should be hockey references of putting with a hockey club. We don't see anything that even feels close to that. It is possible, though, that there are tables that were themed after movies that simply got stuck in development hell and maybe came out half a decade later, and they just had to make a pinball table off a general theme. I don't see the point of the slowdown through the very tight window at the bottom of the pop-up bumpers. You notice that when it drains towards the left in lanes under the bumpers, there's just a couple pegs that slow down all momentum, which to me makes it feel like there was a point where that wasn't the case and the flippers were flinging the ball at high speeds towards the in lane and probably then towards the center drain. This is another table that I think highlights the problem with some slingshots. Like, there's should be a lot more standardization on slingshots. Pros can use the bottom part of a slingshot to bounce a ball from the left flipper to the right flipper or vice versa. And yet, on a lot of tables, that's just not even a possibility because they're angled in the wrong, angled differently, angled in the wrong way.
Is your friend.
Get off my lawn, hacker.
See, you're even in this hurry up mode and the ball takes its sweet time to actually even return control to you. So I don't know how I could have actually gotten a maximum score there to hit the captive ball when he ejected the ball in the pop-up bumpers. I kind of would like a more natural way in which the in which you enter the pop-up bumpers in the first place.
Hey, bud, I got the ball.
I don't want it just to be ejected from a sinkhole. In a lot of ways, these pop-up bumpers feel a lot like the Twilight Zone pop-up bumpers, which that's one of the problems with Twilight Zone, in my opinion, is that the bumpers are just this afterthought.
Chicken!
Over here, chicken.
You can hit me!
Or me.
Oh!
Yeah, cluck. Oh.
Chicken!
Like, almost every other table by this point would have had more sinkholes and more randomness, more movement of the ball. Like, I believe I said last time we played this table that a pinball table themed around putt-putt makes a lot more sense too. Because at least in 2021, my mind says that if pinball is going to succeed in any way, it has to be kid-friendly, so going for standard golf is way less rewarding than kid-friendly, family-friendly putt-putt. And I guess I should applaud that the Gophers aren't cussing or doing anything particularly inappropriate. Like, there's a dirty joke, time to play with your putter. But that could easily fly over the head of people. The kickback there actually, for the first time, shot the ball all the way to the ramp on the right, which the kickback should be way more consistent, and we've seen it in practically every other table we played where it is way more consistent. There must be a switch on the back of that jump too. Well, actually, that you really wouldn't even need a switch since it's always only comes down for a timed amount.
An easy jackpot.
Also feels like there should be some sinkholes, sneak-in sinkholes in the back of that ramp, if not 2 or 3 of them. And the ramp, the loop going around is kind of pointless, so I'm not sure if there's really a reason for it to actually exist. Now would be a great time to try and hit the captive balls as much as possible. The fact that you get the extra ball by sinking in the green, and you sink a hole in the green and everything, and you get a mystery reward by sinking in the green is just a little too much.
Now you've done it.
There must be a diverter in that back loop. Shoot the captive ball, it says. Easier said than done. I may have to hit the captive ball 2 complete times again. Because it was a timed thing. Logically, the move now would be to sink the ball in the green, but trying to take that shot caused it to drain.
Ooh, impressive.
I think when you compare this to like Elvira, you also see how this table's just not as fun. If this was an Elvira themed golfing game with monsters, I think the writing would be better. Inevitably this is gonna glitch again, so we'll just see what happens. Well, it actually worked. Nope. It glitches almost every single time.
If balls were meant to fly, they'd have wings.
Yeah, I think eventually I would be able to accomplish everything on this table and get the wizard goals. I think that's true for a lot of wizard goals, but I have 156 achievements still to do on this table on Pinball Arcade if I was going to try to get all the achievements, which honestly you wouldn't be able to get them all unless I bought the remaining tables, which I'm just not really in the mood to buy more tables to potentially just own them on the wrong format. I'm suspecting that Visual Pinball, the open source the emulator, might be the next generation of software like this. And while that has an editor and is in part around designing homebrew pinballs, I suspect there are people out there who have emulated existing tables and maybe violated copyright in the process, but I imagine there are sources out there where people have made or will make entire curations of old pinball tables. And at a certain point, who cares whether it's copyright infringement or not? Like Williams, Bailey, Gottlieb, they're all out of business. Sega Pinball Division, it's some holding company. Stern is the only company that still makes pinball tables, and arguably they are making only pinball tables to kind of rip off pinball fanatics. There might be an argument against like emulating some of these smaller companies like Jersey Jack, but then I'd also say there's an argument that some of those tables, since they're all so expensive anyways, it's not realistic or helpful for society for a copyright to exist in this instance. I often argue that copyright has failed miserably to do the thing it's supposed to do, which is help the best outcome for society in general. It's societal good, not an individual's good over the expense of society. And there is an almost argument that while having an original Mona Lisa benefits one art collector, having the ability to have like open source public domain prints and reproductions of Mona Lisa in millions of houses benefits a lot more of society. So arguably, even at the case of Jersey Jack, it might be better that the emulated version is free and out there in the public domain, and then the actual physical real world ones built and sold by Jersey Jack are supplemental to that, to the emulated one. And arguably that's the case with a lot of emulated video games, and even more so on pinball, because pinball has that physical element and that high expense. But we are getting to the point where having a original cartridge of like Super Mario Brothers is getting way more difficult and expensive, to the benefit of kind of nobody other than collectors selling their original cartridges of Mario Brothers, whereas all of society is benefited a lot more by being able to play Super Mario Brothers. And at the moment there are ways to do that through emulation, and there are ways to do it through the Nintendo eShop. And arguably Nintendo has enough money already and doesn't really buying a game through an eShop doesn't improve the eShop on the Nintendo Switch, nor does it even increase the odds. There we got the rip-off multi-ball. Yeah. Like, it's really hard not to look at Nintendo in particular as this dragon lying on a gold mine of content that they are too lazy or too greedy to even bother to sell to you. And at a certain point, that does make the argument of abandonware. And while pinballs are physical machines, I think there is this idea of abandonware that really applies to a lot of the old pinball tables. There is also, I think, an argument that if a company goes out of business, it almost certainly always goes out of business through a bankruptcy. And if bankruptcies required you to relinquish all copyrights, then many things that should be in public domain would be in public domain, because you have lots of holding companies that just buy defunct companies and sit on the rights or sell the same thing over and over again, to the point where that right of initial sale that copyright is supposed to guarantee a creator is not really being applied to an original creator, and it never really was. It was always being applied to a corporation. I have no idea how that shot ended up there. It's like that red tile is tilted horizontal. Maybe it is. Like, maybe I'm looking at the visuals wrong. So we need in multiball to get up the ramp. And I don't know how to get up the ramp without boning this up and draining a ball. Sorry, I went into a bit of a copyright rant there, but yeah, we really are probably less than 30 years away from all physical pinball tables just falling apart miserably, like to the point where we may not even have a lot of the components, because everything will just be so solid state and micro designed. There may be no more what they call new old stock. There may be nobody around that can really fix these things. And even if there is somebody around to fix them, it may very well be a case that a ball just flipped off and disappeared. Notice how they programmed the simulation to adjust for that. I can guarantee you that the original table would not have been programmed to adjust for a ball falling off the table. And nobody would ever build a pinball table to shoot a pinball off the edge of the table. That would be ridiculous. Just because the pinballs would get dirty. That is one thought I've thought about as far as pinballs, that since the balls do get dirty and need to be cleaned about once a month, it's a little surprising that nobody ever tried to create a ball washing mechanic inside the pinball, like a sponge or something that the ball would roll across and gather dirt. Because I know there's like ball washing machines for golf. I don't know if they really work that well. But that never really seem to have been designed. And it may not have really worked. So when that kickback shoots the ball up, you really do want to just immediately flick it with the top right flipper. I don't know which things I haven't done yet. I feel like there's probably one reward we haven't gotten yet. Oh, you know what I haven't gotten is stopped all the 9 holes.
You can hit me.
Some of these modes kind of get in the way of other shots though, because if he's gonna pop up like that. So I'd have to sink 3 more holes, I think, to get the thing I want to get done.
Ooh, impressive.
I've got all kinds of shots ready to go. This is just one of those tables though where I'm just not good. I'm just not good at the shots. Let's see, if I start a multi-ball,
Ooh, impressive.
that might be focused towards the super jackpot, which I may not have gotten. Or
This one's on us.
it might be what do I have to hit?
Enough already.
To start them, shoot the ball and sink the hole.
You must have sand in your shorts.
That was great.
We're your worst nightmare.
So that starts multi-ball, which maybe we go for a super jackpot at this point. Even the flashing lights on this table are unimpressive. Which is a shame because I want to like this table. I kind of like the theme. I kind of like the characters.
Oh, that's for the seller.
You're in the wrong game, idiot. Hurry up.
So much for the super jackpot. 36 million.
Ooh,
Again, fairly low scoring game.
Blast that card.
Why did that ball bounce back that way? It's weird to have the ball go somewhere you weren't expecting it to go. But it does, it just kind of bounces in different directions sometimes.
You missed.
7th hole.
I can feel the power.
That's all those wires down there.
So he's chewing on the wheel circuit, short-circuiting
You're
it.
making me dizzy.
And there's a reference
Sucker.
to Cyclone. I mean, Funhouse. You're making me dizzy. So should we just practice our shots and wait for this mode to end, or what can we do
Drive the ball.
to get to that ninth ball? Jackpot lit.
This ain't as easy.
It looks like our in the ball bonus score is as high as possible, or I guess maybe that's the ninth hole being lit. Which, yeah, it definitely feels like it takes a lot of work to get to that ninth hole. And unfortunately, I can't make excuses here and say I don't think I'll ever be able to do it, because I've been able to do it. It seems like you get that kickback very often too. Do I have one more ball? Or was that the last ball? That was the last ball. And I think we set that as the last game too. Because I'm just not having a huge amount of fun with this table. But in all fairness, if this is going to be the dud table that we see, it's not bad at all compared to some of the other duds that we have seen. So yeah, hole-in-one challenge would have been what we would have gotten if we had gotten to the ninth hole, so totally doable. And then Super Jackpot is just about getting the ball. Once you start multiball, then you shoot this ramp, and then you go through the left in lane, and then you hit the slam ramp and aim for a hole-in-one score. Which, yeah, by all likes, like, it seems like that red part is not a wall per se. To me, it looks like a wall, but apparently it isn't. Apparently it is more horizontal, and the ball lands on that red lane and then drains down the hole. Which the nature of this top lane plastic only exists there because of that slam ramp and that jump, and like whodunit, it's just not a good idea. You're never going to have a great experience with jumps like that. At least in comparison to Phantom of the Opera, that large ramp hits just standing targets and then bounces back. And yeah, I can't think of any other table that has like a really good jump, because I just don't feel like that exists in general. And I don't really see a reason to play teed off, just to highlight that teed off is also kind of bad. So yeah, if I was going to play anything, it'd be go back and play Junkyard. Or go back and put some more time in the Safecracker, or play Scared Stiff or Arabian Nights or even Circus Voltaire. I think is better than No Good Golfers, and Medieval Madness is decent also. So I believe the next table we're going to cover is Starship Troopers, and if that turns out to be a good game, then this row of 8 is probably one of our best collections of tables. Not because there's just what I have now decided to be the best table in Junkyard, but because while Safecracker kind of sucks, it's still interesting, and Scared Stiff is good, and Arabian Nights is good, and Circus Voltaire is slightly above average, and Medieval Madness is very interesting to play, even if it isn't in the top 10. So they kind of are going out with a bang. And I don't really feel like as pinball tables start dying that we started to see worse and worse tables come out. If anything, the real comparison would be to look at all the electromechanicals from the 50s and 60s that are just incredibly boring and don't have anything special about them. And you'd almost certainly consider those to be some of the worst pinball tables ever. But it's hard to even call an old electromechanical table boring just because it has only one bumper and like maybe 5 drop targets. I think there is something lost in a lot of these tables as they became more and more complicated. Ooh, Big Hurt is kind of a great example of a table with another jump that really does not work, if we were going to talk about tables. It also is kind of a great example of taking a sport and trying to convert it to pinball and it not really making sense. So yeah, Big Hurt had this 3-way jump here, and then the glove blocking your shots. But at the very least, compared to No Good Gophers, which is way more remembered, this table keeps the lower playfield more empty, and it kind of lines out your shots better so you can see what you're shooting for and what you're aiming for. So I would have liked to see No Good Gophers be closer to this table design than what it ended up in. And there definitely are some problems with this table design too. Well, let's check out the records and then we'll call it a day. Let's see, use the mouse. Now what's going to be crazy is we're going to find out that my score is not anywhere as low as you might think. So of all time, we've got 458 billion, quickly jumping down to 160 billion. So I figure there's some major cheating here. Then fairly quickly jumping down to 90, then 75, then 45 billion. And then by the time you're at like 25, you're at 5 billion, which even that seems fairly high for such a low scoring game. My score of 42 million, not even doing that well, puts me at 24,588th of all time, which that seems reasonable. Although what's interesting on all of these leaderboards, even having hundreds of thousands of people score, is we very rarely see somebody end up with the same numbers. We don't really see any ties here. Where you would think even with a low scoring game there would probably be a high chance of a tie, but I guess there's enough diversity there. My score overall, playing this on a Wednesday, it puts me in 18th position, which for this week the highest scoring ones we have are at 618 million. Somewhat believable, yeah. And then monthly, playing this on the 21st day of the month, we've got several 100 million scores, and my score is at 109th, which, yeah, that all feels reasonable. And then we still don't really know what the Hall of Fame score is all about. didn't really get explained. And it really doesn't seem to matter at all. You know what we might want to do is we have these challenges. Now, like official tournaments, there's apparently no official tournaments gonna ever happen at Pinball Arcade, would be my guess, ever again. So at some point, somebody got a Hall of Fame score, I assume is what this is, and that's just gonna probably be it forever. Whereas my score is non-existent. See, in tournament, scores are different than all-time scores. Interesting. So there's an all-time rank and then a free tournament. You'd think they'd be randomly doing that all the time. And then the online play is in beta, and I doubt they're going to improve on that or ever finish that. But there are these challenges. So it might behoove me to check out some of these challenges while we're doing the unpurchased games. Let's see, all-time overall scores of like 8,000, whereas my score is none. So severely less scoring, where these challenges still seem to work on a weekly basis. It would be very easy to have things automated that way. So that makes a lot of sense that the challenges shouldn't disappear. It would also make a lot of sense to have tournaments happen on a monthly schedule too. Particularly since in 2021 we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are supposed to be socially isolating. It would make so much sense for people to be playing a lot more pinball online against each other. But yeah, coincidentally, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4 unpurchased games that I could potentially make an episode around that. So that's something for me to think about. Anyways, we only have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more tables that have been purchased. So we are soon to be done. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.